I love my Lumix S5 Mark II and S9, but going into the Lumix world, I felt like there just wasn't that much lens choice. That's where the brand new L-mount version of Samyang's 35-150mm f2 to 2.8 comes in. This just might be the one and done lens of the L-mount world. Samyang sent me this lens in exchange for this video, but they don't get to see this video before you guys, and all of my thoughts are my own. At the start of this video, I said how this lens could be the one and done lens of the L-mount world. To test that, I'm going to use this lens in as many situations as I can think of. I'm talking portrait shoots, car shoots, gimbal work, travel, and I think we'll also give it to someone else to see what they think about the lens and if it would work for their niche. So, with that said, let's start off with something simple. When Lumix updated their autofocus and added car subject detection to the list, I knew I had to test this out. But I didn't expect it to be as good as this. I chose to use the 35-150 for two reasons. One was for this video, but two was for the versatility of not having to change lenses every time I wanted a different focal length. This was a lot to set up, I hope you guys appreciate it. And because we didn't have a lot of time on the shoot, this was the best time-saving lens that I had. This lens didn't disappoint. I'll be making a full video breaking down the car shoot in my next video, but in a nutshell, I used two suction cup mounts to mount my S9 with the 35-150 onto my car. And I chased my friend in his Porsche around the Highlands of England. The shots from this lens are clean and appealing. I'd say they're pretty similar to what you would expect from a Lumix lens. But something that Samyang asked me to talk about was the photography performance. I found this to be a kind of interesting request because it meant one of two things. Either A, people just weren't talking about the photo performance of this lens in their videos, or B, people just don't like the photography performance of this lens. So let's test this out with some portrait photography. This lens has a variable aperture, which is a phrase I think most people don't like to hear. I mean, I know I don't. But thankfully, the amount this lens varies is really small. At 35mm, you have an f2, which creates really nice, dreamy images. But as you start zooming in, you build up to an f2.8, and it stops there. You could essentially see this as a 35-150mm f2.8, which still sounds amazing to me. I think the images out of this lens look incredible. The compression when you're zoomed in is really nice, and being able to open up to an f2 when you're at 35 is also great. When we zoom into the photos in Lightroom, I can't see anything weird like a bunch of moire or chromatic aberration or anything. To me, the images look really sharp and really clean. So far, this is feeling like one of those lenses where you just go out and capture a good image. This lens doesn't skip a beat when it comes to autofocus, and that's because Samyang has joined the L-mount alliance, so it behaves basically the same as a Lumix lens. When shooting portraits and even filming videos later on in this video you'll see, I was totally happy with the autofocus performance. The only thing, and I will touch on this more later, is the minimum focusing distance could be better, but it's not awful. When you zoom in with this lens, the minimum focusing distance changes, and that's pretty common with most zoom lenses anyway. The minimum focusing distance of this lens at 35mm is around 0.3 meters or just over a foot. And when zoomed into 150mm, the focusing distance changes to just under a meter. I think it's like 0.85 meters, and that is just under 3 feet for a minimum focusing distance. It's definitely not the closest minimum focusing distance I've used, and would it be nicer to have it be a bit closer? Yes. But stick around to the end of this video because we'll touch more on that later on. It may be completely obvious to you, but this lens is really big. I mean, look how hilarious it looks on the Lumix S9. It completely dwarfs it. This lens weighs 1.2 kilos or 2.65 pounds for my American viewers. And I'm not gonna lie, after some time of using it, this lens does start to feel heavy. Thankfully, when you're walking around, there is a lock button that stops the barrel of the lens extending with gravity. I saw someone else's video where they said how the zoom ring alone was stiff enough that it stopped their lens extending on its own. But this wasn't the case for me. This lens, incredibly, has some custom buttons and dials on here. There are two custom buttons on the lens, and these two buttons are used to hold your focus. If your subject is in one position, you can press the button to keep the focus locked to that position. Then when they go out of that area, the focus will stay where it is and it won't do any weird racking or focus hunting. There are three custom modes on this mode switch. Mode 1 is your standard manual focus mode where your focus ring controls your focus. But in this mode, the lens is supposedly parfocal, which is something that filmmakers have sought after because it means when zooming into or out from your subjects, you don't also then have to readjust your focus. Whilst it took me a few tries to get it right, this feature surprisingly does work. Mode 2 is to be used with autofocus turned on. This mode changes your focus ring into an aperture ring. If you're accustomed to changing your aperture with a ring on your lens rather than using your camera's dials, this is probably something that you'll love. Although perhaps something that could be improved upon this is when switching to custom mode 2, I would love if there was a way to make the ring click as you're changing between each f-stop increment so that I have a physical tactile response so I know I've made the change. Because the focus ring is so smooth, I think it's really easy to accidentally change your aperture without intending to. Mode 3 is a cool one, but it takes some practice. Back to manual focus, this lens will now let you do a dolly zoom. As you zoom out whilst moving forward, the lens will keep your subject the same size in frame and of course keep it in focus. The dolly zoom is an insanely difficult thing to pull off, so having the support of a lens to make this kind of shot easier for you is huge. Editing MC here, it was kind of difficult for me to get the dolly zoom feature to work. I could kind of see a hint of it working, and I think part of it is how much you're zooming in and how much you're moving, and you need to take that into account. Perhaps this could work very well if you had some sort of dolly system set up or some sort of zooming assist function like with a focus motor kind of thing. I don't really know. I can see how it kind of is trying to do it for you. I do feel like it's a bit weird that this is a feature of the lens, but I don't really see how it's any different to what I could do with any other zoom lens. A dolly zoom is more of a technique in filmmaking. It's not something that is like a feature for a lens to give you. All right, that's enough handheld stuff. Why don't we throw this thing onto a gimbal? No. Go away. With this lens weighing 1.2 kilos and the S5 Mark II weighing 740 grams, it should fit on the DJI RS Mini 3. However, because it's coming kind of close to the weight limit of what this can handle, which is 2 kilos, I'm kind of leaning towards the Zhiyun Cinepure Weebill 3E because this can handle 3 kilos. Plus, bearing in mind I usually throw a cage on this thing and I'm gonna put an ND filter on the front, it might just tip it over the edge for the RS3 Mini. So we'll just put that over there and work with this. Although that said, I could just throw the lens on the S9 and that would save quite a bit of weight, but meh. So I'm having a bit of an issue. The problem comes from that this gimbal can't really hold the camera and the lens at the same time. One, if I want to zoom out at all, definitely can't do that. Two, I've had to put a counterbalance. But three, the main problem is I actually can't put an ND filter on here without the motors giving way. So gonna have to switch over to the bigger brother, the Zhiyun Crane 3S. That's better.
Like a sip of love in paradise. You got a story I can rewrite.
awesome. Wow, I sure am glad that when I get home I can use my MCKC LUTs to quickly and easily color grade all this footage. Huh? What do you mean you don't know about this? If you click the first link in the description below, you can get a sample pack of LUTs completely for free just by joining my mailing list. Or if you want to look around the store, there are some other LUTs that can help you create even faster. This is a heavy lens. We've already established that. But it's cool that you can still fly such a long lens on a gimbal. However, the size and weight of this lens could still pose a challenge in one area: travel. I recently went on a trip to Lisbon and brought this lens with me to test out. Whilst this wasn't the easiest lens to bring with me because it takes up almost an entire compartment in my Peak Design bag, it still fit in my carry-on bag. I'm a firm believer in bringing equipment that, even though it might be cumbersome in size or weight, for example, if it helps you to capture a kind of shot that you just wouldn't be able to do without it, it's worth bringing. Heck, I even brought a DJI Ronin M with me backpacking all over Japan. That thing is clunky and just bounces around if you don't like strap it together. It was the old two-handed one. It was ridiculous, and I had a suitcase to bring around as well. And again, the lens didn't disappoint. I tried to do a bit of street photography with this lens as well whilst I was in Lisbon, but I'm not the best at this. But I know someone who is. How you doing, George?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. I have a question for you.
Yes.
Can you shoot street photography with this?
Yeah, but it'd be a bit cringe.
Let's give it a try.
We all know it's about the smaller camera, the better. Well, are we shooting street photography on a grey, dead day?
Oh yeah. We don't have a choice here in Manchester. Having used this for some street photography now, what do you think of the lens?
For me, it's very different to what I would usually use, like being like quite a big like telephoto zoom. But in general, like at 35 and 50 and a little bit over, it's nice, like it's quick and everything. For me though, one thing I noticed was even at 35mm, the like close focus was actually kind of far. For example, we're taking some photos of dogs just then, they kind of like come close towards the camera, and once they got a bit too close, I suddenly can't focus and I'm having to like shuffle back. That's not all street photography, but for the dog tests, yeah, it was a little bit difficult. But in general, it's quick, it's flexible. I'm not someone that goes to like super long focal lengths.
What is something that you, because you brought a camera with you today, didn't you? So what's something that you would use normally?
So I usually, if I'm using mirrorless, I'm flexible with mirrorless, but like at the moment, my main camera is this RX1, which is a compact but full frame. It's so tiny. Which is like minuscule, but this is a very like unique camera in its like category. Just to relate it, this is the 35mm f2 lens, and then this at the wide end is a 35 f2. So if I was to use this for street photography, that's pretty much what I would use it at. Yeah. And it just feels like a tank to be able to use it.
It's a big lens.
Digital, if you want to have something you can carry with you whether or not you're going to take photos, it's nice to have something compact, in my opinion. But if you were going out for like dedicated, I'm just taking photos, this would still be great. Because as long as you're committed to like, I'm just carrying this, it'll be fine. It is heavy. There are heavier setups. Yeah. But for me, as someone who also does video, this does feel like an easy go-to video lens.
But as a street photography lens, would you use it or would you go to something else?
I personally wouldn't. But if you were someone who likes to shoot at like longer focal lengths, I think it's probably gonna be quite good for you. But for me, as someone who shoots like 50mm or lower, it doesn't feel like, it feels like just too much weight for really what I'd want to use.
It seems to me like this lens can do it all. But it can't. It falls short in one area, and that's just because it's basically impossible. This 18mm can do it. This 9mm can do it. Even this 20mm can do it. That's right. It can't shoot wider than 35mm. But you know what? That's okay. I asked if this can be the one and done lens for the L-mount world, and it can't. But if we were to pair something like the Sigma 17-28 or the Lumix 16-35 with this lens, that would genuinely become the dynamic duo of the L-mount world and possibly be all that you need. It's really easy to say that I love this lens. It's a great lens. And when Samyang agreed to working with me, I emailed them on a whim. I was over the moon. I was like, really? You guys want to give me this lens and give me this lens and make content about it? Like, so cool. I think for the price of £1,200, it's a very fairly priced lens for the amount that's going on in here, the focal range you get, the autofocus performance, just the build quality as well is extremely solid. Nothing is ever going to be perfect, but this lens comes pretty damn close. I'm just hopeful that Samyang releases a wide-angle sister lens to this so we can have the dynamic duo we need. The Robin to this Batman. And don't forget to subscribe.